Independents, meantime, are going to decide the 2012 election. That's the finding of political think tank Third Way. Researchers at Third Way compiled data from secretaries of state in 8 key swing states and found that the number of independents is up more than 3% in those states, while the number of Democrats and Republicans have both fallen. With us this morning from Washington to talk about Third Way's research, Deputy Director Lanae Erickson, also here in the studio, Bloomberg political analyst Matthew Dowd. Matt, good to see you this morning.
In his cowboy boots.
In his cowboy boots.
Bringing a little Texas to New York this
He's an
morning.
Austin boy, of course. So I'm going to start the conversation off by turning to Lanae. Lanae, I say in my introduction to you that independents are going to decide the 2012 election. Before we get into this conversation about the individual states, isn't that the case in the last couple of elections anyway? Is it more, is it, I guess I'm asking you, are independents more important to this election than they have been in the last two?
You know, what we found in this study is that actually they are more important this year than ever. And the electorate has really dramatically changed since 2008. We've seen a huge increase, especially in these battleground states, in the registration numbers of independents, and a decrease in both Democrats and Republicans, but mostly a decrease in Democrats. So when we looked at the 8 battleground states that have partisan voter registration, we saw an 825,000 decrease among Democrats, where independents went up 250,000. So that's a lot of votes that Democrats are going to have to pick up next year as opposed to 2008, and that's going to make their path to victory that much more difficult.
Lanae, can we break this down and, take a look at an individual state like Florida, for example? How did it break down there?
So in Florida, Democrats lost about 5 points, and independents gained about 4 points, and Republicans lost about 2 points. So overall in the electorate, though, that turns out to be a very, very crucial amount. And the thing about 2008 is that President Obama won basically as many Democrats as he possibly could. He won 89% of Democrats. So they can't really make up the difference in those lost Democratic voters by getting more Democrats that they didn't win in 2008. So they're going to have to make up those votes with independents.
Matt, I know you do some research of your own and you pay attention to what other people do. Do you buy what Lanae's research has found, that there are more independents?
Yeah, this has been an increasing number over the past election. So this is not, it didn't brand new show up in this election. It's increasingly grown over the course of the elections.
Why is it happening?
Is
it
think
because of voter dissatisfaction with gridlock and partisan politics in Washington, or is there something else behind it, perhaps?
Well, I think that it goes to the fact that the independents in this country and a lot of voters in this country are completely dissatisfied with both political parties. They think they represent the opposite ends of a polarized spectrum, and they don't want to be associated with them. And we are at a point in time which is historic, where both political parties are at an all-time low. Normally what happens is one party rises, the other party falls. We're now at a point where both parties are at a low, which is why independents have grown in the last 2 years, but they have grown in the last 15 years. And she's right that this is key part of the election strategy.
Does this raise the prospect that in 2012 we could see a third party?
It increases the likelihood that it could happen. Because right now you have independents now, if you look across the country, are the majority of the country, are a plurality of the country in this. And it's going to depend on who the Republicans nominate. If you have an incumbent president who people don't like and don't like the job he has done, and then the Republicans nominate somebody that is polarizing, can't appeal to independents, it increases the prospect of a third-party candidacy.
Let's bring Lanae back into the conversation, because Lanae, you and Third Way did the research here. We showed everybody what happened in Florida. Give us some more evidence. How about, say, Colorado? I know that's another one of the states where your research really bore some results.
Sure. In Colorado, actually, there was an increase in every party registration. So Democrats did go up by 1 point in Colorado, but independents went up by 9. So in the overall share of the electorate, the Democrats' share is still down. And that means that independents are going to be all the more important there. And I think you're right that it really is due to this dissatisfaction with both options. I mean, independents are really rented. They're not owned. And they've swung wildly in the past 2 elections. Democrats won them by 8 points in 2008, and in 2010, they lost them by 19 points. That's a 27-point swing in just 2 years. So,
Lanae, but what does the report? What does the report really tell us? Because there are some states, like in New Hampshire, like Texas, Matt Dowd's home state, where you can't register for one party or the other. So the report really isn't universal.
Well, no, the report focused on the battleground states that had partisan voter registration. So that in New Hampshire is actually one of those states that reports on its voter registration, and so it was included in the study. But we also looked at exit polls in the 4 battleground states that don't have partisan voter registration. So we made sure that the trend was consistent in those states, and it was as well. And I think we've seen this in public opinion research as well, in self-described independents, not just in registration.
Lanae, thank you very much for joining us this morning and presenting to us some of the findings in your research. Lanae Erickson, Deputy Director of Social Policy and Politics at the think tank Third Way. Now, Matt, before we let you go, it makes me think that perhaps some of these politicians are making a mistake. Maybe it's too early in the race to say that, but playing to your base, it seems to me, may not be the right strategy in this election.
Well, I think campaigns are always about 2 things. They're always about motivation, which affects your base, and it's about persuasion, which affects independents or lightly tethered voters. It's always about both, and it's how you allocate those resources in a given election that determines whether you win or lose. Some elections are more about motivation. Some elections are more about persuasion. This election is going to be about both, and the campaigns understand it. The problem happens when you go through a primary process. If you go too far one way or the other, you alienate the independents, and it's a hard time getting them back. I think that's what's happening in the Republican Party right now. They're going to have to take some time to get some of those independents back. But it's always about motivation, and it's always about persuasion.
Yeah, the key question, who can do both? Matthew.
That's why you bring Matt Dowd in.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Matt Dowd, our political analyst here at Bloomberg. Motivation and persuading. Who can do them both?